Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Short Hops with Wichita Wingnuts manager Kevin Hooper. Short Hops is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Wichita manager questions about the Wingnuts, baseball or sports in general, or just seek Kevin's wisdom about life. This week we have an exciting program for you as Kevin talks about the player updates that are going on with the team so far in the last week. He discusses a little Major League Baseball with us and talks about how the Giants and Cubs have greatly improved themselves. And Kevin's wife shares some advice for an angry wife out there looking to get a little restitution from her husband. So let's get right to Short Hops. We want to welcome back manager Kevin Hooper this week. Kevin, let's first of all begin with player updates that you have for us.
Yeah, a couple big keys to our puzzle. Last year, and Van Skyke the last 2 years retired. Jason Van Skyke and Scott Richmond decided they were going to hang it up and move on and possibly join the real world out there, I guess. But Van Skyke actually took a pitching coach job with the high school in his area, and then he's going to do some summer collegiate stuff as a pitching coach as well. So excited for him. I know he wants to be a college pitching coach, and I think Richie on his side of things, he's not real sure what he's going to do or what he wants to do for that matter. So wish both those guys nothing but the best. Jeff Shields is a guy that we got in a trade for a player to be named later when we sent Espinoza over there, and we got him from St. Paul. But he's decided if he's going to play, he'd like that to be in St. Paul. So we ended up trading Jeff back to the Saints just for a player to be named later. So George will take care of us later on down the road with the player that he thinks may fit and maybe that we need. And then a couple signings. We re-signed Harrison Kane, who will possibly be our center fielder, just depending on how the roster shapes out, but he'll be manning one of those outfield positions, arguably, if not the best, one of the best defensive outfielders in the league. And then Santos Rodriguez, a Dominican, that we're very excited about, a 6'6" left-hander who throws in the mid to upper 90s, who's been at the AAA level, who will be another key piece down in that bullpen.
6'6", wow. Is this a guy that you're bringing in? I know you like to have a left-handed specialist at times. Is he coming in for that kind of role, or are you seeing him in a larger role than that?
Yeah, I think he'll probably be a larger role with that velocity. I think he'll be possibly a late inning guy for us, one of those late innings trying to shut the door.
Well, that's pretty exciting there.
Yeah, very exciting, especially with his experience. Yeah. But I love the experience. I always say you can't teach experience, and to have guys that have played at that AA, AAA level, it's nice to have.
Absolutely. Well, let us get to our fan questions this week. We first of all begin with Steve from Manitoba, who says, great job as always by Robert and yourself, which of course we know that Kevin's carrying the show. But because of the unique bar set by the current individuals who have had their numbers retired or names honored at Lawrence Dumont Stadium, do you think a Wingnuts player will ever have his number retired based on on-field performance alone?
First of all, Steve, appreciate the support as always. Love getting the questions week after week from you. They're always very quality questions, that's for sure, so keep them coming. That's a tough question to answer, I think. I'm not sure what the plans are for us and what our requirements would be for that. That's always a tough subject sometimes. I think that's maybe depends on organization to organization. And it'll be interesting. It's always interesting to see, if or who that first wing their number retired, if that even happens. Like I said, it's not something Josh or I have even ever spoken of or brought it up. I think we're still pretty fresh into our existence, and, I think that we're looking at a ways down the road if that does happen.
That's an interesting question there. Tom from Wichita would like to know from you, is it a challenge to try to figure out how a guy fits into the years of service parts? Because I understand that the rules are kind of cumbersome to try to figure out, or does the league immediately let you know how he fits under the league guidelines?
Great question, Tom. It's tricky. I'm always adding up. I'll pull a guy up on Baseball Reference, and I'm always adding. He has to have 75 at-bats in a season or 30 innings pitched. Now, the short season leagues like the New York Penn League, the Northwest League, they don't count towards a guy's classification unless, and like the rookie balls, they don't count either, unless a guy spends 2 years in one of those leagues. It's kind of like your first two count as one is how it works in those leagues. So if you spend 2 years in one of those lower level leagues, it takes 2 years to count as one, where let's say a guy gets drafted and starts in the Midwest League, that's going to count right away. So full season A ball pretty much is where the clock starts, unless you spend 2 years at that rookie level or the short season ball. And then once you get to Indy ball, your first 2 years of Indy ball count as one. So let's use Smythe for an example, who I'm not sure if with the Arizona Diamondbacks today. So congratulations to him. That's another player update. So another guy signed that makes 7 since the season started for us. So congrats to Paul and wish him nothing but the best. But so this was Smythe's first year in Indy ball out of affiliated ball, and Paul Smythe was an LS5 was his classification. So let's say he had an assignment, he came back to Wichita, he would repeat as an LS5. And once you repeat, you don't repeat again. So let's say a rookie's a rookie for 2 years, then he just goes up classification every year as long as he's got the 30 innings or 75 at bats. It's pretty confusing, and it can be confusing sometimes adding it up just because of all the movement by players. But I've done it for so long now, it's kind of become an art, I should say.
So that's how Mike Zuzalik then became Rookie of the Year.
Yes, because that was his second year in Indy ball, and it was his second year. He repeated as a rookie. So this year, if he was back in St. Paul or wherever in Indy ball, if he didn't make the club out of camp and went back to Indy ball, he would be an LS1.
I'm kind of curious if a guy is okay. So let's say a guy plays at Single A this year. Okay, then next year he's hurt. And then the year after that, he goes back to Single A and then comes to Independent League the year after. So he just get 2 years for Single A because he was hurt the 1 year because he didn't really have any time to get at bats or innings pitched?
Yeah, that wouldn't count.
Okay.
That wouldn't count. You have to have the at bats or the innings pitched.
Okay.
It's like Brent Dean. You pull up Brent Dean. Brent Dean is still a rookie, and he's almost 30 years old because he's never had the at bats. He never had the at bats. In his first year with us, he only had 65 at bats. So this will be his third year with us coming up, and he'll still be classified as a rookie.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Our next question comes from Mike from Kansas City, who'd like to know, Samardzija and Cueto signed with the Giants, and it's an even-numbered season next year. San Francisco has to be a lock to win the World Series, wouldn't you think?
They sure do pretty well in those even numbers, no doubt about that. But a lock is a big word, and there's a lot of other teams that I believe are going to be really good. Obviously, those are two pretty big upgrades and two pretty big additions to a starting rotation. And I think the next question we're going to talk about, the team has also made a lot of movement, is the Cubs. And I saw their lineup kind of mapped out the other day, and they're going to be pretty tough as well. So I'm sure San Francisco's going to do a great job. Big fan of Boshi and what he does there and how they go about their business. But there's going to be a lot of teams, I think, next year, as always, that are going to be quality clubs.
Speaking of our next question, Adam from Chicago asks, Kevin, the Cubs signed Jason Hayward, Ben Zobrist, and John Lackey, which is huge, but deal Starlin Castro. What do you think these moves do for the team's chances of winning the World Series?
I think their chances are going to be very high to possibly win a World Series just with what they've acquired. Tough to give up Castro. I'm sure it's tough on their end to give up Castro. He's only 26, I believe. And what he did when they moved him to second base, the production he had was off the chart. And I'm sure that was a tough move for them because here you are, you give away a 26-year-old and you obtain a 34-year-old in Zobrist. And you give him a 4-year deal, I believe, for the $56 million. I tell you what, Zobrist, the World Series did him wonders.
Mm-hmm.
You get put on that spotlight and you do well. It just raises your stock and your value, and it obviously happened for him. He was a hot commodity at those winter meetings. And then they get a guy like Jason Hayward, who's a tremendous player. And Lackey, too, another rotational guy to put in there. They're gonna have a really good chance to make a run at the World Series, no doubt about it.
Kevin, I'm kind of curious because you were a middle infielder yourself. It seems like from general managers and teams that when they're trying to build their infield group, that the shortstop position seems to get a lot more respect, I guess is the word I'm going to use here. There seems to be, if you have a really high-quality shortstop, that seems to be more important to a team than having a really great second baseman. Is that true?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. The shortstop's arguably decided catcher in the most important spot on the field. They're the leader. They're the leader of the infield, of the entire infield, and they just kind of make everything happen, and everything pretty much runs through them. So I think that's why it's so important, and make it so important is just because of kind of the leadership role that they bring upon.
Okay. I was always kind of curious why second basemen just don't seem to get that much attention from an organization. I mean, you have a Ryan Sandberg or something like that every once in a while, but
right.
you don't hear about a lot of great second basemen.
Right. Exactly.
Sam from Wichita would like to ask, Kevin, I don't really understand this Rule 5 draft. Can you explain it to me?
Yeah, this is a tough one, Sam. It's a very confusing deal, even for me when I was playing and whatnot. I'll try to shorten it the best I can. There's a major league phase and there's a minor league phase. So the major league phase, anybody that's not protected on the 40-man draft, on the 40-man roster can be drafted. So if someone's protected on the AA or AAA roster, they can be Major League Rule 5, is what they call it. And I think the cost of that is $50,000 their team has to pay to draft a guy. Now let's say a team's 40-man roster is full, they can't draft anybody. They don't have any spots. So when you draft a guy in the major league phase, he has to spend the entire season, the upcoming season, in the major leagues. And if he doesn't, he gets offered back to the original team at half the price, I believe is how it works. It's crazy. It's kind of a crazy deal. So let's say, they get through the major league phase, then there's a minor league phase. So let's say a guy is protected at the AA level. He could go in the AAA phase of the Rule 5 draft. If the guy's protected at the A-ball level, he would go in the AA phase. So it's always a level up from where you're protected. So I think the price on that might be $12,000, I believe, is what it is. And like I said, it's crazy. It really is. It was always a big deal. You know, I had a good year my first year in AAA, and there was a lot of talk on whether I would be Rule 5 that next year because I wasn't protected on the 40-man. It didn't happen, but it was fun to talk about, and it always is a fun time and to see who gets them. We actually had two guys out of our league, Patrick Johnson and John Brebbia, Patrick from Sioux City and Brebbia from Laredo, who just signed within the last 2 weeks to an affiliated club, and both got Rule 5 in the minor league phase of the draft.
Really?
So both of them switched teams, yeah. So that's, I think maybe some teams are going to learn from this and maybe not sign guys until after the Rule 5 so that hopefully they can protect them. So that was very interesting to see that. Now, to be honest, that's great pub for our league and for those guys, and I wish those two guys, obviously coming from our league, nothing but the best.
Wow.
So there it is in a nutshell. There it is in a nutshell. It's a pretty complicated deal for sure.
Do you know who Patrick Johnson went to then?
The Pirates signed him.
Yep.
And then the Marlins Rule 5'd him.
Okay. Interesting.
And Brebbia, I'm not sure with Brebbia. I think Arizona signed him. And I don't know why I have St. Louis on my mind of Rule 5 and him. So I'm not positive on Brebbia.
I see that David Espinoza hard at work there getting Patrick Johnson.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Craig from Detroit asks of you, Kevin, your old team signed a lot of free agents over the last week, including 3 catchers. Do you see them trying to rebuild the team, or are they going to be able to compete next year?
I think it's probably a mixture of both. They'll do some rebuilding, but they're also probably going to get some guys who can help. Mike Pelfrey is a good friend of mine, and I was pretty excited when they signed him. We've become pretty good friends. He's a Wichita State guy. He lives here in Wichita. We keep in contact all the time, and I try to see him as much as I can. But very excited that he'll be a Tiger, and very excited for him and what he's going to be able to hopefully bring to the table for them. But we'll see. It's always interesting. Al's been there a long time. Al Avila, who's now the general manager, took over for Dombrowski when he departed. Been there a long time as the assistant GM ever since I've been around. They'll do a good job. It's a good market there, and I think that they'll do a good job. You got a guy like Miguel Cabrera, you always give yourself a chance, I believe.
Absolutely.
He's such a good hitter, and if they can surround him with some quality individuals, and if they can get some pitching. We always talk about pitching and how pitching is going to win and give you a chance. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of rebuilding and trying to find some pieces that can make them competitive right now.
Henry from Denver asks of you, how do you feel about Pete Rose not being reinstated by baseball, and do you think he ever will be?
Since he didn't get reinstated right now, I think his time's probably done. I think we might be done talking about that for a while unless something crazy was to happen. But, it's tough. I heard the other day that he is still gambling and still recreationally betting on baseball, so I don't think that helps his cause one bit. Whether it's a problem or something that he just enjoys doing, kind of is what it is. But I don't know. I think he might be gone before the time he might get reinstated if it does ever happen.
Kind of a sad situation for sure.
It definitely is.
Ben from Oklahoma City asks of you, Kevin, I notice a lot of teams are able to find a guy to close for them for 1 or 2 seasons, and he will do a great job, but then he can't keep it up. How does a guy like Trevor Hoffman or Mariano Rivera do it for so long?
Yeah, I think that's why those guys will be in the Hall of Fame, because they're pretty special at what they do and for the longevity that they do it for. Mariano and Trevor, for that matter, just so fun to watch and so good at their craft. And, closing, you ask a lot of guys who are closers, it's such a mentality thing, and a lot of guys love that portion of it where they're going to get the ball at the end of the game and try to shut the door. And it's just fun to watch a guy who does a quality job at it. I think it's just timing, being in the right place at the right time, as baseball is. Teams are going to give you that opportunity and they can run with it. But he's right. This day and age, it seems you don't see a ton of guys do it for a long period of time with one team.
Heading into our NFL this week, our favorite fan, Chiefs fan, comes up with, Kevin, first of all, thanks to you and Rob for giving me a shout-out each week. 2 games out of first, 7 wins in a row. Forget wild card. We're winning the AFC West, right?
Shout out again, my man, Chiefs fan. Always love giving you a shout-out. Always love talking Chiefs. Winning the AFC West, tough, I would say. Being 2 games back and with only having a couple left here, it'll be tough. But I'm so impressed with the run that they've made. Once again, I keep going back to them. Sure, we sound like a broken record of them being 1-5, and here they are 8-5 now. So whatever happens, very impressed with what Andy Reid has done and what they've been able to do as a team, especially after losing Jamal Charles.
Hey, there's no reason to not want to tout that. That's quite an accomplishment, quite a run.
Absolutely.
Barry from Wichita asks of you, everyone seems to think that Mike McCarthy calling plays is going to make a huge difference for the Packers. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. And there's times I think where it's time for a change of pace. I think that, and that's what this is. I think it was just a change of pace, and he was ready to get back to calling plays, and he did. And they had a good week this last weekend doing so. So, yeah, I just think that a change sometimes is good, and I think that he's probably excited to be calling the plays. And being the head coach, he's going to hold himself accountable, and there's really no one else he can blame being the top dog. So, they played really well this last week when he called the play, so I'm excited to see what's ahead of him, and he's got a pretty darn good quarterback to be out there running the show for him.
Lou from Hutchinson asks of you, who do you think is going to win the NFC East now that the Redskins and the Eagles seem to be getting on track?
Lou, I think we put them all in a hat and draw.
That's as good odds as any.
NFC East is, yes, sir. That's as good as odds as any. I think the Cowboys are going to be out, though. They've really struggled without Romo in the lineup and are going to continue to do so. So, honestly, I think you draw those 3 out of a hat between the Redskins, Eagles, and Giants. I think, me personally, I would think the Eagles or Giants are going to end up winning it. And as I'm watching the TV screen right now, the Giants are going to go into halftime tied 17-17 with Miami. So, obviously, a big game for them. See if they can't finish this out, but really, draw those 3 out of the hat and hope for the best.
First Lieutenant Nate from McConnell Air Force Base asks, do you see the Bengals completely falling apart now that Andy Dalton is out for the rest of the regular season?
Huge piece gone. That's their leader, and Andy being out of there. But you know what? A.J. McCarron came in and did an okay job. I think he threw for 280 yards with 2 touchdowns, and then he threw the 2 interceptions. But you hear me talk about experience all the time. I think that hopefully he can get on track here pretty quick, and with the more experience he gets here towards the end, the better he's going to get. But I heard today Dalton isn't going to have surgery, so I'm guessing that there's a chance that he'll be back here sometime at the end, if not in the playoffs.
You know, people were kind of critical of McCarron or how he played, but when you throw it for 280 yards against the Steelers, you have nothing to complain about, I personally think.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's people's jobs is, it's just talk about others, you know, and maybe how bad they did. But I think it was impressive what he did, and those are big shoes to fill, and I think he did a pretty darn good job of doing it. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes for them in the future here.
Next up is James from Topeka, who'd like to know, the Jacksonville Jaguars put up 51 points. Isn't that a sign that the world is coming to an end?
How about that, James? That's pretty impressive. They've got a really good young quarterback in Bortles and some pretty young, talented receivers. They got a chance. They're making a run right now to playoff push, and I think they got a chance to be pretty darn good for a couple years coming now. So I'm anxious. I like them. They're young. And I think that, like I said, they're going to be good for a couple of years here coming, and anxious to see what they can do because I like their coach, too. I'm a big fan of him and his intensity and what he brings to the table. So, been fun to watch, and it'll be fun to watch these next couple of weeks, see if they can sneak in.
Our next 2 questions come from Cindy from Derby. The first one is, what are you hoping Santa brings for your team next season?
If I had one thing I would want Santa to bring to our team next season, that would be health. I just want all our guys to stay healthy and to be able to put up a full season health-wise. I think that'd be the biggest wish from Santa on my end.
Her next question is, I heard it was your birthday last week. Happy birthday, Kevin. Would your wife mind if I gave you a kiss to start the season? And what did you get for your birthday?
Thanks for the birthday wishes, Cindy. Not a whole lot for my birthday. I get a lot of, usually I get cash from family members and whatnot, just kind of spend on. I hear I'm a tough guy to buy for, so I think they think money's the easy thing to give me so I can buy what I want. But so that's what I got for my birthday. I asked my wife if she would mind if I got a kiss to start the season. Her answers were no. So sorry, Cindy. I'm out on that one.
Oh, and on to your wife, angry wife, who I want to say I had to tone down this question from the wording that was originally used. But Kevin, you said on the show that you talked to your wife about some of the questions that you're asked. So I would like to ask her advice. My husband said something really insensitive about my weight and is trying to make it up to me. He said he would really like to show me how sorry he is. Any thoughts on what I should demand?
All right, angry wife. This is straight from her, and she got a kick out of this question. She really liked being involved in the interview, actually. So she said you need to milk this the best that you can possibly milk it, and milk it as much as you can. And you need to ask for the cooking to be done, the cleaning to be done. And when you do forgive him, don't let him know that you forgive him. Just keep milking it a little longer. So there's your words of wisdom from my wife.
That's great. Well, thank you for joining us this week, Kevin.
Thanks as always, Robert. Take care.
See you next week. We want to thank manager Kevin Hooper for joining us on Short Hops this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Wichita Wingnut skipper, please send them to us at askkevin@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's askkevin@minorleaguesportsreport.com. As usual, please have your questions to us by Sunday evening so we can give Kevin a little time to review them before we record the show on Monday. We want to thank you for joining us this week. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Short Hops.